Welcome to Identity Unboxed, where we provide mentorship and promote representation for Black professionals in the advancement of the Black community.
We are seeking guidance from exceptional Black leaders, scholars, and professionals with expertise in their respective fields.
We hope to foster a space that promotes authenticity, inclusivity, and restoration for our listeners while exploring the intersection of our personal and professional lives.
This project is a culmination of our lived experiences as young Black professionals to transform our life trajectories, to overcome adversity and reach triumph.
Our intention is to inspire you on your path to discovering your purpose.
According to recent data provided by Zillow, the median rent in Seattle is $2,080 per month, and that's 4% higher than the national median. Many people, particularly the younger generations, are losing hope in being able to afford their own space, as most apartments require you to make 3 times the rental rate. I know, especially as a single young person, it's very hard these days to live independently because a lot of people have dual income, and the market kind of like takes that into consideration. But it's like, what about us? So keeping that in mind, as the middle class continues to get priced out of the city, what solutions do you find most effective in generating resources for low-income communities as gentrification continues?
So this is a huge, complicated topic that we've been working on, and it is also a multi-departmental subject that we have to collaborate with our other departments to get to the solutions that community needs. But there's just as it relates to resources for low-income communities, there's two different general buckets that housing fits in, right? So there's subsidized housing, which is affordable housing projects. City of Seattle, just in this last election, passed our housing levy, which was for close to $1 billion in funding over the next 7 years, I believe, for affordable housing projects. Right now, it is very given interest rates, it is very expensive to build, which makes doing these affordable housing projects like just that much more difficult. With the affordable housing dollars that are leveraged from both state and federal funding, as well as the levy funds that we have through the housing levy, as well as the dollars that we see through our MHA program, which essentially obligates majority developers that are doing for-profit housing projects to commit percentage of dollars for affordable housing projects. Through all of those sources, the city, through the Office of Housing, works with the not-for-profit development community to provide affordable housing at different area median income levels, to serve 50 to 80% median income, less than 50% median income households, so that they do have a place to rent that they can afford. In addition to that, though, there's the other bucket, which is market rate housing at all levels of affordability, right? um, both rental and properties for purchase. Uh, if our Office of Housing deals with all of our affordable housing complement for the city, um, our Office of Planning and Community Development uh, is working with community advocates, with the Office of Housing, with the mayor's office on the development of a policy framework so that we can ensure that as we um, adopt a new comprehensive plan, that new plan incentivizes and supports the creation of many different types of housing at multiple levels, so that understanding that we're in a housing crisis right now, and that like the average value of a home in this city is quickly approaching $1 million, um, and that you have to earn twice uh, area median income to afford to like buy into the current housing market. Um, we've got to start to do some things differently. Part of it is just going to be the creation of literally more housing of any type. But we at the state level, we just passed a housing bill, HB 1110, which put in place a state mandate for counties and cities to convert our formerly single-family residences into properties where a minimum of 4 homes would be allowed to be built on any single property. In concept, I mean, if you look at the amount of land, I mean, we're landlocked as a city. We've got the mountains on one side, we've got the water on the other. We can't go out, so we have to go up, right? We have to become more dense. So in concept, the idea of taking single family properties and being able to densify them, I mean, the reality is that in our code already, you can take a principal home and put an accessory dwelling unit and a detached accessory dwelling unit on a existing site. So you can have already 3 homes on a site. They have to be condominiumized, but still it can be done. What the promise of this state legislation, once implemented, is that you can have 4 freestanding residences, whether they're townhomes or freestanding or stacked flats, and as many as 6 in transit-oriented development nodes across the city, so areas served by light rail and bus rapid transit. There will be more opportunities to create infill housing in neighborhoods across the city that, if we think about the price of land, splitting that land cost between 4 homes makes for a more affordable property than a single family home that may have occupied that site before. What it means in practice is that there's lots of sites that have an established home on it that will never be converted, and like that's very much to be expected. But I think that what we're trying to unlock, both looking at our urban villages across the city, our large urban centers where we expect there to be greater density and then a new concept we're starting to talk about what would it be like for us to invest in neighborhood nodes across the city, like small commercial centers where you could also have um, small areas of greater housing density. And then how do we also do that along our transit corridors, like provide for greater density? I mean, such that like you can live in a apartment unit and get on the bus and not need to own a car. Um, we are working with Seattle Department of Transportation. We're working with Sound Transit and our stationary planning. We're working with Office of Housing. We're working with Seattle Parks. We're trying to create a holistic vision for what our neighborhoods need to look like as the city continues to grow, and how do we create more affordable housing options for individuals and families across the city.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. I feel like you really went into a lot of directions with like the nuance of it, and it's a good thing to explain it holistically, because I know like urban development isn't, my specialty area or something that I'm too versed on. But I remember when I moved to UW and they first passed the upzoning in University District, where they were starting to build the M and all these high rises, and I was looking at the mandatory housing affordability, and I was like, okay, well, they're getting all these skyscrapers are going up. They're getting millions of dollars and the streets are getting worse. So where's this money going? And I think that's kind of like what a lot of people feel like is there's millions and millions and millions going into homelessness and the streets are just getting worse. Like we can barely get tiny homes. And so I think, that's a common frustration for people that don't see what's going on behind the scenes. It's like all this money is being flooded into homelessness and it's just getting worse. So what is the city doing? And that's a common frustration. And so thank you for explaining that, because I think that's going to be helpful for people to hear that it's a process and there's a vision that you guys are trying to build out as the city continues to grow. And it's something that will, just with our economy, the way our economic system is set up, it's something that really takes a lot of thought, time, and planning, navigating this kind of system.
Yeah, it does. It does take a lot of time, and just if I think about um, the housing levy that was just passed, going from the idea of we need to have a new housing project on site A to like groundbreaking and opening day, there's that I mean, it depends on the site and the project, but like that's typically a 5 to 7 to 10 year process, right? Between like conception of the project, development of the vision, going out and finding funders and funding, applying for funds from the city, uh, and then pursuing the permitting required for the project, and then
Bureaucracy of it all.
conceive and then construction, right? They it so it I think that the mayor is very invested in addressing our homelessness problem that the city has alongside King County and our regional homeless authority, um, as well as our investment in public safety. Uh, but we we know that while we're making these investments now, that in some cases they are just really hard to see, and that it does take time. And we are invested in trying to make things better now, but also a long term vision for the city.
Yeah, thank you so much for going in depth on that. I wanted to echo everything Brad said, and definitely it's a multifaceted approach that you have to take to create, equitable communities and make sure that you're really centering the needs of those that are, bringing forth their concerns. So Yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciated the point you talked about with increasing density and how that's going to be really important moving forward to, ensure that we have enough housing for everyone that needs it. And I wanted to ask you actually if you would be open to sharing if there was one policy decision that you could put forward to create more equitable communities. What would that be? I know that's completely off our, questions that we had planned, but I really was hoping to hear kind of your insight on that.
No, that's actually, I'm really glad you asked that question. It's actually an easy one for me to answer.
Mhm.
And oftentimes that's not going to be the case coming from me. Um, so last year at the state level, there was legislation passed to ensure that at time of closing, that there was a fee captured that would be put into a fund that would help support first-time homeownership for families below a certain median income level. I think that the next step of thinking in that direction would be, how do we help build generational wealth for our for families of color, and the best way that I think that we can do that is helping people to invest in their homes, right? So I think that if we go back to the statement I was making earlier about the fact that Central District used to be 75% Black families, now it's 20% Black families. If when we do this upzone, that's a part of the comprehensive plan that we adopt in 2025, if we can work with the state and even work to see if there's federal funds that can be brokered, where families below a certain income level that already own a home, but they want to stay and not be displaced, they can have access to a zero interest loan, for example, so that they can build a second unit and or a third unit, like on their property, that would allow them to bring their grandparents to live on site with them, that would allow them to rent a unit and have another income that would support their livelihood, and that the building of those additional units increases the value of their property. Like, these are the ways that generational wealth has been excluded for so many of our BIPOC communities. Like, we really need to reverse that negative circumstance that was created through city policies, frankly. And I think that I think that this is a very tangible way that we can do it, and that's very easily understood. So it's something that, like, that's not something that can be done simply by the city of Seattle. Like, we would need to be doing it in partnership, both at the state and federal level. But it is something that I'm really interested in pursuing.
Wow, thank you. That's just so great. And that's, home ownership, such a pressing topic for, BIPOC individuals, but even just, Gen Z, or kind of wondering, with inflation as high as it is, will we ever be able to afford a home, especially in, Seattle? So to hear programs like that potentially starting up in the future is promising. And moving forward to kind of a bit of a switch, we were hoping to hear about a defining moment in your life as a Black man working in public service. What would be that moment for you, and what were some of the strategies that you used to navigate that difficult time?
Okay.
It's a big question. I know. Take your time and be
Right.
candid.
Right. Um, yeah, so I I will tell you that moving to St. Louis for 5 years, and being at a majority white institution, um, I had a very hard time. Um, Difficult program, not a lot of family resources, um, and I often just felt alone. Um, and I didn't graduate from undergraduate on time as a result. Um, I was extremely stressed out. Uh, I found myself at the end of my 4 years of undergraduate work without a degree, without a place to live, without a job, and I mean, on the street. Um, and uh, I remember this very poignant moment where, like, I was walking down a tree-lined median, down the middle of a street, which I shouldn't have been doing, um, and just thinking like I have no place to go. Like, what the hell am I gonna do with myself now? And I had an epiphany in that moment that I was not going to be able to lift myself up out of my circumstance on my own, um, and that was okay. That I needed other people, to support me, to help me, somebody else's couch to sleep on, and that it wasn't a sign of weakness, that it was actually a sign of strength to ask for help. Uh, I think that, how that translates for me. Well, and so now I guess I should finish. So, like, I did that. I did find a friend that I could stay with. I did like come up with a life plan for myself. I did get a job. I did finish my degree. I did move back to Seattle. I did go to graduate school. I did like find myself on the career path that I wanted to be on. Um, I think that, like, how that translates for me now, we all have to help each other to get to a better place. And it really does take a village. It really does take a community. And I mean, I will just say this for myself. Like, I have a civic responsibility to be a part of the change that I want to see. And it's not something, it's not just the writing of a check for a fundraiser. Like, it is, I mean, for me, it's my life. It's my whole life. Like, what is it that we can do to commit ourselves to change and betterment for others? Um, and how do we make it okay for others to say the same thing to themselves as I said to myself? It's okay for me to ask for help. It's okay for me to need something from somebody else, and for me to accept a gift from someone else to give me shelter, to give me a pathway in life. Um, that's part of uh, mentorship. It's part of philanthropy. It's part of civic leadership. It's part of investing in your community. It's part of volunteerism. Like like it manifests itself in so many different ways. And I think that the more we can get away from like the negative drive of the high and mighty dollar and more toward um, the social well-being of others as the driver for our decision making and our investments, the better we will be as a people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your vulnerability. Because I know many of us, oftentimes growing up, we can feel like burdens, and then we subconsciously learn not to ask for help, or if I ask for something, then I'm a burden. And I love what you
Yeah,
said about the high and mighty dollar, because I feel like what we need to adopt more is I am because we are. Like, we
yes,
are who we are because of those around us, those who came before us, those who will come after us, that continue to build the legacies that we want to see. And elaborating on that a little bit, I wanted to ask, if you're comfortable with sharing, is there a particular defining moment in your life or in your career where you just said enough? Like, I'm gonna do what I gotta do to get out the mud. Like, enough is enough, and I'm gonna take off. Like, can you define a moment where that drive just clicked in you and you found that courage and strength within yourself?
yes. So I mean, I think that the story I told about where I was at the end of undergraduate was an example of that, but another totally different one. Um, so as a full-fledged adult, um, I um while working in this international firm that I mentioned before, so this was probably 7 years ago, maybe. Um, I found myself in a circumstance where I was working on a job uh, for a white client, a civic project, where the client pulled aside my boss and said, so I was the project manager for this project. Uh, the client pulled my boss to the side after a meeting and said, you can call that boy whatever you want to when he's in your office, but he's no project manager for my job. And
Wow.
and racism, ageism, you know, I you know, I I mean, I frankly at the time didn't know what to do with myself. Um, and I'd been working in the industry for a couple decades at that point, over a couple decades at that point. Uh, and I'm not naive. I understand how much racism still exists, both institutional and otherwise, structural racism, institutional racism. Um, uh, but to encounter it on this civic project that I was working on, I was beside myself. I had to figure out a way in that moment and for the rest of that project to I had to figure out how to navigate the the racism present there and still elevate the work, have it like we ended up uh, achieving an award-winning project like like through that process, through the process of the design of that site. Um, despite like the personal challenges that I had with the leadership on the owner side. And I think that, just going to the statement of enough is enough, like I had to decide that, like, you know what? I don't care. Like, you can look at me however it is that you will, for whatever your reasons, and that does not matter to me. And I'm going to do what needs to be done and what is right for this project, for the people that it will serve, and that's what's important. Um, and you know, it it became another great project that I'm very proud of in my portfolio, and a part of leadership in the firm that I was in, and I'm a better person for it. It sucked at the time, to be clear, but
It makes you stronger. It's the universe's way of, building you up. Little do we know.
yes, very
Yeah,
much so.
wow. Thank you, first off, for being so open and sharing those really pivotal moments in your career. And I think those stories are so important for our listeners in particular to hear, to see where you are now and that you had to go through, these really horrible, I mean, that's a horrible experience when you are, a professional and you've been working in that field for decades, and it's just completely undermines everything that you've done. And it can almost make, people feel as, specifically that you're not qualified, or kind of validate some of those feelings of the imposter syndrome that you might have too. So just to see that you're
Yeah,
able to overcome that, and now you're able to do the work that you do, it's so moving. So I just wanted to thank you for being so open.
Jenny, I do appreciate you mentioning that. Imposter syndrome is such a strong um, negative force that it doesn't. I don't think well, I guess it depends on who you are, but like it doesn't matter how many years you have been in practice. Like I still to this day like grapple with like, well, you don't really want my opinion, do you? Like what value? Um, it I think it's very important. So there is a humility piece there. It is important to always be humble. But battling against imposter syndrome, you are supposed to be in the room. We are supposed to be in the room. And uh, we will have to battle ourselves and others where the message is that we are not supposed to be in that room. And I can say there's different ways that we need to show up depending on where we are in our careers and what it is that we're pursuing, but we need to show up. We need to make the investment in ourselves and in the path that we want to walk, and we owe that to ourselves. We owe it for the sacrifices that others have made for us to be where we are today. And that negative voice, that imposter syndrome voice, like it just you gotta shut that. I mean, like you gotta hear
Drown it
what.
out.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta hear what is it that I'm struggling with. What is it that what what's the connective tissue that makes me not feel secure in this circumstance? You got to listen to that, but you cannot listen to I'm not supposed to be here.
Definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I bet it was so fulfilling to, see you won an award on the project and you were able to, you know, put forward your best work. So despite all the horrible experiences that you had.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One foot in front of the other. That's the theme with us is we're gonna, encounter obstacles. There's gonna be systemic forces, individual forces from all sides and all angles trying to stop us from making change and taking on our path. So thank you for being an example of what can be, for the young 20-year-olds that are early on thinking there's no way I'm going to be able to work my way up or beat these folks, so thank you for showing that through hard work, determination, and perseverance, and believing in yourself and also being vulnerable, that it is possible.
Of course. And I do think that you can do and it sounds cheesy. I have been accused of being cheesy before. Um, like you can do whatever you put your mind to.
Absolutely.
Um, and you can't do it on your own. You have to surround yourself with people that can support you in different ways. Some of it's emotional support, some of it's financial support. Um, but you can. You have to be able to visualize what it is that you want and create a work plan for yourself about how you will get there. And you do have to have the patience to like persevere through like challenge and difficulty, and know that like these things do take years, but like you you can do anything.
Absolutely. To Tiana, I'll let you take away the next question.
Sure, yeah. Well, to wrap it up, I know we've taken up so much more of your time, Rico, than we initially planned. But lastly, we ask all of our guests this question on identity and how it's influenced your work, and you've explained in depth quite a bit so far in this conversation. But lastly, what does Blackness mean to you?
You know, I think that has changed for me over time. Growing up in white suburbia, I was very self-conscious of being a black person. Um, uh, and in undergraduate at Washington University in St. Louis, I so often felt alone as a black person. Um, so and but now, um, I feel empowered, right? Uh, I think being black for me means having a responsibility to acknowledge the sacrifices of all the black people and black family that laid the groundwork before me that I benefit from today. Like I have privilege, right? Like I have a home to live in. I have this job. I have two healthy teenagers. I have privilege. It doesn't it doesn't mean that I don't deserve those things, but it does mean that like with privilege comes responsibility. And I hope that like in how I live my life and in the work that I do, that I am able to be a mentor for other Black students that like, uh, I mean, being totally selfish, that want to get into built environment and become architects and engineers and like urban planners and like shape like what our built environment and our communities and neighborhoods look like, uh, which frankly is about representation. Like, like uh, I think that if you make a space that is welcoming for Black families, you're making a space that's welcoming for all families, right? Um, and so I think for me, Blackness is about a quest. Like I am on a quest for betterment. I'm on a quest for you know, justifying the pain and loss that so many others have had to suffer. Um, like if there has been so much pain and there is still so much pain, what is it that I can do to try to make things better. And I'm just one person, right? So like I I need to be a part of a tribe, like all of us, like doing our part in these things. And I guess that's part of being Black too. Like we are all part of a family. And I feel that, like I it's not always easy uh with family. But important, and we will always be family together.
Absolutely. That was so powerful. Thank you for sharing your perspective on that because it's true. We're powerful as a family. We're stronger together. We're stronger as a collective, and we all have an individual responsibility to help the collective. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you so much. And partially, you spoke about having the privilege to give back to our community, and I think it speaks to like this entire project that Brad and I put together, where we see people like you that have paved the way for us, and that's why we want to platform you and hear your stories, so that we can learn from you and we can try to take some of these strategies and make the way for people that come behind us, and keep opening those doors. So you're doing it. You are a mentor to us, and that's why we wanted you to come on and speak to our listeners. So, Rico, we're so grateful just to share this time with you and for you being so generous with your time. We know you're busy, and I just wanted to give you a chance. If you have any last thoughts you'd like to share, please feel free.
Um, well, I again, I want to say that I'm grateful to the two of you for doing this podcast and kind of building this opportunity for uh for all of us to speak and to share our stories. Um, I you know I think I think the I guess as a closing thought, like if I look at the political landscape of the nation right now, I think that we have a very difficult road ahead, right? And I think that our rights and privileges are uh, under fire and being questioned, like right as we were just starting to get to a better place in the world. Um, I don't think that we should be discouraged. I think that we should be emboldened to continue on whatever our chosen path, but also to like lock arms with each other and fight, fight for the things that we know that we deserve, for the better life that we know that we should all have. Um, and I think that, in my work and in my life, like I'm going to have to work alongside lots of people that don't see the world the same way I do. And that's just, that's just how life is. Um, and I think that's okay. I don't think that we should tolerate racism or hatred. But I do think that we have to tolerate and learn from difference, and that there is opportunity for both education and celebration there. So I am hopeful. I think that we have a lot of work to do. I think the road ahead is going to be hard, for all of us, but I am hopeful.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing that because that's something that we're going to need to remind ourselves as the months and years go on. So,
Yes. Thank you so much, Rico. You really ended it perfectly, so I don't have anything else that I can add. But again, we just really appreciate you sharing your insight and your journey. And being so open with us. So we hope that we can connect again soon with you, and we're so excited for everyone to listen in.
Thank you so much.
We are so grateful for your support, and thank you for listening to Identity Unboxed.
Authenticity is your guide to cast an impact on the world that you will be proud of. Signing off with pride, Tiana
and Brad.
Thank you so much.